Alrighty, we are live here on Bubbs on Sports on YouTube. Thank you everybody for stopping by. We're going to be talking all things Jets today. Jets Panthers joint practice on Wednesday. Obviously, yesterday the joint practice got rained out, so there was just Jets practice yesterday. But we'll have a day off today. No practice today. Tomorrow we'll be back with Jets Panthers preseason game. So looking forward to that. That should be exciting. And we're going to be breaking it all down, talking Hard Knocks. Any questions you guys got, might be taking some calls as well later on in the show. Questions about joint practice, comments about joint practice, preseason preview, whatever you guys got, drop them in the comment section. We'll be going for about 45 minutes, half hour, so our typical time. What's going on, Armin? Thanks for stopping by. Tomorrow, obviously, some big storylines going in. Is Becton again? How many snaps does he play, especially with the offensive line continuing to be a big question. Obviously, some spots in the O-line you feel, I guess, decently good about. I mean, wherever AVT plays, you feel good about whatever he can do. But there's major questions at the two tackle spots. Billy Turnstile, as we all call him, Billy Turner, has not been good at all. He stinks. No way you can start him week one. So hopefully seeing Becton go out there tomorrow and playing more than 7 snaps would be beneficial, would be a big positive, I think, for this team. If he can go out there and play 20, 25 snaps, because the first preseason game is one thing to go out there and, go out there and maybe only play 7 snaps, 10 snaps, but you got to continue to work your way up. You got to build up more endurance as we go on here during the rest of the preseason. Game number 2 now. So, yeah, O-line, a huge question. And I don't know what the whole, again, we could talk about the Zach Martin stuff too. Obviously, with the situation down in Dallas where he's holding out with the contract, and I don't know if anything would ever happen. I mean, he's a stud. He is a beast at the guard position. So I would definitely take him. I just don't think the Jets would go out and do that personally. But I guess we'll see. Anything's possible. I mean, they did go out and trade for Aaron Rodgers. So, I mean, they are all in on winning. Would they bring in a Zach Martin? I don't see it happening, but you can't rule it out, I guess, especially if you do move AVT to tackle, you plug Martin back, Zach Martin into guard. I mean, I could definitely see it, but we'll see. I mean, there's so many questions. There's so many ways the Jets can go. I mean, I think, as you mentioned here, they need to sign somebody after tomorrow's game. Yeah, I mean, if Becton tomorrow only plays 10 snaps, I mean, you have to sign. You have to sign somebody. You have to potentially bring somebody in. Especially depending on the whole AVT situation. If he's going to play tackle, then who's going to slide in at guard? You could always move. You could do Tittman at guard. You could play Schweitzer at guard, who can play pretty much anywhere. So it'll be interesting to see how it all ends up playing out. But it's the biggest question mark on this team, because we went into camp and some of the bigger questions on this team were obviously offensive line was a big question. Linebacker was, but you start to feel good about Jamie and Sherwood. He's put together a nice camp. So linebacker, even though linebacker depth is still an issue, it's not as big of an issue as we thought about going in. Like Jamie and Sherwood, we were all kind of wondering what would he be like. And there still is that question. He's still got to go out there and play in a real game and actually got to go up against legitimate talent. But, practice is only one thing. But he has looked good. So the linebacker is definitely still a little bit of a concern, but it's not as much as the offensive line. The offensive line is the biggest issue with this team. And it's unfortunate because the offensive line has been an issue for a while now. I feel like every year we talk about the offensive line being an issue, but I guess the positive is, if you want to look at it from a glass half full perspective, the positive aspect of it is you could potentially still have the solutions in-house, where you still have Dwayne Brown coming back. Let's say Becton does build up his endurance and trust in his knee. He can go out there and potentially put together a full season. If he can somehow do that, you believe in Becton. You have AVT who can play guard or tackle. You still have Tittman who could potentially play guard if AVT needs to move to a tackle. Tittman's had a better camp. I don't know if we'll see much of Tittman this year, but it's interesting. Lincoln Tomlinson too, who I did a player preview on, that's up on the podcast. I mean, Tomlinson's a big factor too, a big key, because he was not good at all last year. If he can try and be constant, if he could be more consistent, I should say, this year, he's going to be a big factor, especially depending on how those guards play out with AVT. DeMarco Jones, Joe Haig, Eric Fisher are the best OT on the market. Give me 2 of those guys. Yeah, there's a couple of guys out there. It's just, I would just take anybody right now. Just bring somebody in. I mean, even if the Jets have brought in a handful of linebackers. I mean, bring in a handful of or a couple tackles. I know Taylor Lewan's been talked about. I know that's one of the more popular ones among Jets fans. I feel like Jets fans have. We talked a little about him too in the offseason. I think there was a little bit of chatter too around the potential of bringing in a Taylor Lewan. Obviously spent most of his career in Tennessee, so he'd be an option. It's interesting to see how they approach this whole thing. The biggest thing is you need to keep Rodgers upright, because if Rodgers goes down even for 2 weeks, that could be the division, that could be a playoff spot. I mean, I don't think it would be that bad, but if he misses, let's say he just misses 2 weeks, that could be the difference from winning and losing the division, the difference between hosting and going on the road for a playoff game. So it's a big deal when it comes to the health of Aaron Rodgers and the offensive line. And I think whatever it takes, you've got to try and bring in somebody. I mean, you're all in to win. If it takes going out and trading for somebody like a Zach Martin, which it's going to take a whole lot to do, if it goes out and signing a guy like a Taylor Lewan, who's been in the league for a while, a solid piece. You know, both guys are in their 30s, so they are getting up there in age, but, it'll be interesting. Definitely, I mean, my preference is Joan or Haig because they can play, swing tackles. Yeah, they've been trying to use Mitchell too Mitchell's kind of utilized as swing tackle. He's at an iffy camp. He's kind of been up and down at the swing with being a swing tackle. So I don't know. I like Mitchell, but he's good. I mean, again, what was he, a 4th, 5th round pick, Max Mitchell? So he's good, but he's not like he's going to be this dominant tackle I thought he showed some positives last year, but I don't know if I trust Mitchell to go out there and start the entire season if that's the way the Jets decide to go. I mean, I know they've been bouncing him and Billy Turner back and forth at swing tackle or swing tackles, using them as swing tackles. The other guys could play one tackle side. But I don't know. I mean, it's funny because you went into camp and the bigger questions were center and tackle. And you seem to have your answer on center. I mean, it's going to be McGovern. And McGovern's fine. I mean, I probably would have rather Tittman just because the excitement of him being drafted, right? But, I would have. You also have to realize as fans that he's a rookie. And putting a rookie center in front of a veteran quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, putting a rookie center in the middle of a season where you have aspirations to go to the playoffs and make a deep run is a tough thing to do for a guy that's trying to develop as well. So I kind of understand where maybe some of us Jets fans, I guess, overreached on the whole possibility of Tittman starting week 1 of a season that is got so many expectations and so much pressure on this team. You're asking a lot out of a rookie center to go out there and be the captain of the offensive line, really, for Aaron Rodgers, which is a lot for a rookie to do. So it's funny because you went in, center was the big competition, but that's kind of, now it's just the tackles. It really is. I mean, the guards, again, Tomlinson's got to be better, and depending on whatever happens to AVT, you don't know if AVT moves to tackle, you're going to have to insert somebody at guard, but there's so many questions, so many ways the Jets can go. They could go from the outside. They could go from pieces in the inside, go with a Becton. Dwayne Brown will be back. Do they go out and put AVT in and then put somebody else in that guard? Do they completely squash that plan and just go and sign, like you mentioned, Armin, somebody from, the outside? Like, there's just a lot of questions, the offensive line. I will tell you, though, you move on from the offensive line. In the beginning of camp, the 6th receiver spot was open right when Mims left. But Malik Taylor has really started to make a name for himself recently with the big catch on the preseason game against the Browns at the Hall of Fame game from Zach. And then he had a really nice play yesterday on a beautiful throw from Rodgers at practice. And I'm not saying that Brownlee hasn't been playing well, but Brownlee was like dominating for the first 2 to 3 weeks. And now recently here, Malik Taylor might be making a late run to put a little bit of fire under Brownlee's seat, I guess, as for a while now, we all kind of expected, Brownlee's going to be the receiver. Brownlee's going to be the wide receiver 6, but Malik Taylor's been playing bad. Malik Taylor's been playing well recently, and he had the big catch in the game. Brownlee didn't do a whole lot in the Hall of Fame game. Had a couple catches and I had like a drop or two. So I think the 6th receiver spot is still definitely a full-on competition, even though it seemed like for a while there that Brownlee was breaking away with it, and there really was no possibility of somebody else, again, Xavier Gipson or Irvin Charles coming up and taking his spot. But Malik Taylor's making a late push for that sixth, or not really late push because it's still early August, but definitely making a push for that sixth receiver spot that for a while, all of us Jet fans thought that it would be Jason Brownlee and nobody else because Jason Brownlee was the main guy impressing, but when Malik Taylor recently has been playing well, and it's his third season. He played in Green Bay, played with Rodgers for 2 years, barely played, but was in Green Bay, knows the system, obviously. So, he's a name to potentially look out for as we roll on here in camp, and you'll get another good look at him tomorrow. I think we'll see Bryce Young tomorrow as well. So just as a football fan, you're excited to see Bryce Young, see what he can do. Obviously, join practices, looked pretty good, had a couple highlights, but anytime the first overall pick, you're going up against the first overall pick in a preseason game, that doesn't matter. Definitely something else to look out for tomorrow is Bryce Young and what he can do. I think most of the Panthers starters will be playing. I think I saw a report that the Panthers will be playing a good amount of their starters tomorrow, so it'll be interesting. I think they only carry 5 receivers, 4 tight ends, 4 running backs. Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how it all unfolds. I would probably tend to say they probably hold 6 but 3 tight ends with Ruckert. But it's interesting. I mean, it's definitely something to keep an eye on with the 5th receiver. I mean, that's obviously Cobb, which would completely rule out Malik Taylor. But I mean, the 6th receiver doesn't have to necessarily be active either on game day. I mean, a lot of these guys will probably be inactive. I mean, I don't know how much run a Malik Taylor or Jason Brownlee would actually get in a game because they would be the 6th receiver. So you're not, it would almost be like Mims in terms of playing time. They're not going to get a whole lot of looks, especially with a loaded receiving core in front of them, like guys like Cobb, Lazard, Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis, McCole Harmon. I mean, those are the 5 guys in front of them. So the receiver core is kind of fine. It's more just, that's obviously just depth, but yeah, how they play out the whole roster, it's going to be interesting with the numbers because especially if we sign a veteran, whether that's Dalvin Cook or somebody else. I know Kareem Hunt's visiting a handful of teams. I think he was visiting the Saints and he might be visiting one other team now. But you have, Kareem Hunt he's still out there. I think he's visiting the Colts too. That's who else. So Kareem Hunt's still out there. You have Leonard Fournette. You have Dalvin Cook. However that all plays out. If Dalvin Cook does decide to come to the Jets, I don't know if that happens or not. I mean, I think I'd like to think that Dalvin Cook would still be here, but I also think Dalvin Cook, in his mind, he wants a bigger role. He wants to be the main guy. He wants to be the focal point of the offense, which here he's not going to get that because he's going to be the number 2 behind Brees. That's the whole plan. It's more for Dalvin Cook to come here to be the backup to Brees, to be the number 1 while Brees is gone or while Brees is working his way back, because Brees Hall is not going to get 30 carries week 1. So, they're going to have to ease him back into it. And there's a chance he doesn't play week 1. I know the Jets are pretty confident that he'll play week 1. Sal's mentioned even going all the way back to OTAs. But again, to my point with the running backs is if you do bring in a veteran running back, then you're going to have to cut one of Izzy, Bam, or Michael Carter. If you bring in, so then you have to cut one of them. If you don't, those are your 4 running backs. Same thing with the tight ends. If you want to hold on to a Nick Baldwin and not use Ruckert as like a hybrid, you're going to have to go one less tight end. And the receivers too, it gets interesting. So the whole roster management, all the spots up on the roster on the offense side of the football are up for grabs, I would say, in terms of some of the running backs and the receivers. And then the defensive side of the football, I mean, your defense line is pretty deep. I talked about potentially Solomon Thomas being a cut candidate, potentially. I don't know if they'll do that. He's a veteran. He knows the system. But the one thing with Solomon Thomas that we've talked about a lot on the show is he can't play the outside. You have guys like Michael Clemens who can play the outside and the inside, JFM who can play the outside and the inside. When you look at Solomon Thomas, he can't play the outside. He's only an inside guy, and he struggled last season. He didn't play very well. So how does that all end up playing out? Free agent backs are waiting to see if any backs get hurt. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're waiting. I mean, even Dalvin Cook, because if somebody goes down, they're going to be there to pick. I mean, they're going to get more. They're going to get a lot more money. Team's going to be desperate, go out and get a lot more money. I think that's Dalvin Cook's approach, which in that case, it's definitely a waiting game because you don't want anybody to get hurt. But I guess from the Jets' approaches, if they wouldn't overpay for Dalvin Cook though for 1 week if Brees isn't ready for week 1. But yeah, I mean Kareem Hunt, Leonard Fournette's, Dalvin Cooks. They're waiting for somebody to go down, desperate team to come up, grab them, and make a whole lot more money than if they would have signed either now or in the beginning of training camp. But I don't know. I still think Dalvin Cook is going to probably go to Miami, if anything, just because that's his hometown. But it's interesting. I don't know if Dalvin Cook's it's an interesting story because he wants to win. He wants to be on a team, again, that can make the postseason. He's mentioned that a lot. Him coming here would only make the Jets better. Like him coming here would give the Jets even a better chance. So I think the Jets have a better chance. I think the Jets have a better roster than the Dolphins. Like he wants to play with a really good quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is better than Tua. I don't think there's much debate about that. So, in terms of the whole like winning aspect and wanting to play with a quarterback, a high level quarterback, then the Jets would obviously be the top choice for Dalvin Cook, but that's again hometown Miami. He could just be using the Jets as leverage. Not sure. The Ravens just signed Kansas City running back Damian Williams. Another RB off the board. So yeah, I mean because they got the whole Josh Jacobs situation. The Raiders are going to be a train wreck this year. I could just see it coming. Even though they've got Jimmy G, he's got you have Davante Adams has spoke out publicly unhappy with the way things are going there, with the handling of the whole Derek Carr situation. Josh McDaniel does not know what he's doing. He is not a good head coach. I mean, he stinks. We saw this in Denver. He wasn't any good. We saw it last year. Wasn't any good. So McDaniels is probably out at the end of the year. He's probably, because they're going to probably be a 4 or 5 win team. He's going to get fired and they're going to restart. Davante Adams will probably be out. You have the whole Josh Jacobs situation. It's just funny because the Raiders, like you looked at their lineup or their roster last year on paper, it was dominant. Like you're not dominant. On paper, it wasn't dominant, but it was really good. Like you had Josh Jacobs, you had Darren Waller, you had Derek Carr, you had Davante Adams, the Derek Carr, Davante Adams connection, and it just blew up right in their face. And it wasn't necessarily the players' fault. It's just their coach stinks. Like Derek Carr did not have a bad year last year. Davante Adams played well. It wasn't like the good players didn't play well. It was that their coach stinks. Josh McDaniels is not good at all. He's just another failed coach from the Belichick tree. I don't know how teams haven't caught on to this yet, but they haven't. But yeah, the Josh Jacobs situation is definitely something to keep an eye on. Josh Jacobs isn't going to come to the Jets. That's not going to happen. Nor would Josh Jacobs want that because he's going to want to be a number 1, not a number 2. But Josh Jacobs' situation is probably causing them to go on and bring in a Damian Williams. Hunter Renfrow gets traded before Davante Adams. Yeah, I think both those guys will be out eventually. I think Davante Adams, I love the idea, or I love thinking about the possibility of the Jets going out and getting him at the deadline. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it's certainly something to keep an eye on. I think, if anything, Davante Adams will probably be a Jet next offseason. Because if the Raiders win 4 or 5 games this year, let's say the Jets come up just short, then next year is going to be the year, potentially Rodgers' final year. Let's say he plays 2 years. Next year is going to be the year. All right, 3rd year of Garrett Wilson. Let's bring in Davante Adams, and let's 1 more year. Let's go all in again. I could see it. I mean, because Rodgers continues to hint the possibility of, he continues to talk about the whole pay cut. He didn't take a pay cut for just this season. He took a pay cut for the future moves. And he continues to kind of send hints about the potential Davante Adams. But I would assume that Hunter Renfrow and Davante Adams are probably both out of there by next season. I think that team's going to look a whole lot different. Josh Jacobs is probably going to be out of there. Davante Adams, Hunter Renfrow. I think that roster is going to look a whole lot different. You're not going to have the same coach. McDaniels is probably getting fired. I don't even know what's going to happen with Jimmy G, but the Raiders will probably have a fire sale. And I'm all here. I'm here for it. I'm all ready for the potential of Davante Adams coming to the Jets, if that does happen. Not going to happen right now. The earliest it happens is the deadline. I don't know if I don't know if the Jets would do that. I guess if Rodgers wants it, you go ahead and make the move, but it's interesting. It's certainly something to keep an eye on. But I think some people I like the Jets receiving core. I know some people are a little worried about it. They have suffered some drops during camp, but I like the Jets receiving core. And I like what McCole Harmon brings. He brings the speed. I like Lazard, his red zone success, his ability in the red zone. I liked how the Jets clearly addressed the red zone. They clearly addressed the issues they had in the red zone last year, which part of it was bad quarterback play, part of it was play calling. And they've improved at both those spots this year because Hackett's a very good play caller in the red zone. But when you look at this receiving core, I like where they're at in terms of some of the red zone. We know what Garrett Wilson's capable of. They're utilizing the tight ends more, which you want to utilize those guys in the red zone. Lazard's a very good receiver in the red zone. Can play the slot, can play the outside. Cobb's good in the red zone. So I like where this receiving core is at. I know some people are a little bit concerned with some of the drops. I mean, Lazard's going to have his drops. Corey Davis is going to have his drops. It's going to happen. But all in all, I like where this group's at. I mean, I think Garrett Wilson, people have to realize too, he's going to take it. He's going to take another step. And I saw this stat yesterday about what he did with each quarterback last season or over his career, or last year was only 1 year, but it was crazy what he did with Zach Wilson, Mike White, and Joe Flacco. The numbers that he put up with those guys, and then to see the potential numbers that he's going to put up with an Aaron Rodgers is going to be wild. I mean, again, I keep saying it. He's going to be a top 6, top 7, top 5 receiver at the end of the year. He's going to be in the conversation with some of the elite receivers, I think, when the year's all over. I mean, the guy had 1,100 yards with the worst quarterback situation in football, had 83 catches. And he did all that where there was some games where they didn't even look at him. There was some games where Zach Wilson wouldn't even look at him because Zach Wilson was just overwhelmed and not any good last year. And then there was other games where, he went off for 100-plus yards. He had, looking at his box score now, he had 3 100-plus yard games. He had the crazy game, obviously, against Cleveland. He did more with Joe Flacco and Mike White than many receivers would be able to do. So, very good year for Garrett Wilson. But just imagining the possibility of Garrett Wilson, the possibility of a Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams tandem would be one of the best 1-2 punches in football. We talk about the potential of Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall. The potential of Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson would be even crazier. Because Devontae Adams is still, I think, in his prime. I still think he's got a lot of gas left. Dalvin Cook's toward the end, and Garrett Wilson obviously is just entering his second season. So, any other questions you guys got? Drop them in the comments section down below. What are you looking most forward to tomorrow in the preseason game? Becton, obviously, big storyline. Looking more at Malik Taylor, who's had a good couple days. Zach, obviously, as well. We'll see a lot more of Zach with, hopefully, he gets a lot more than 11 snaps, which I'd expect because he only because you don't have to go through 3 quarterbacks, and it's the second preseason game because of Streveler getting cut. So, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think tomorrow we'll see linebackers and safeties. Yeah, I'd agree. Linebackers, still want to see more of the linebacker depth, as I mentioned. Not as concerned as it was, but linebacker safeties. Excited to see, especially some of the corners too. Jimmy Moreland's put together a good camp. Trey Dean had a good game in his first preseason action on last Thursday in Canton. So looking more towards Trey Dean as well. So definitely some good storylines there as well. Ashton Davis, not that anybody wants to see. Not that anybody needs to see Ashton Davis, but he's there. I believe Trey Dean had 8-9 tackles, so definitely looking at Trey Dean. He's an under the radar guy to make the roster as safety depth. Jimmy Moreland's put together a good camp, and the Jets are going to have to. Jets are just looking at the cornerback room here for a second. The Jets are going to have to make. Well, one roster spot's going to be available because Eccles is suspended week 1. So they're going to have to hold one guy on the roster, hold one more guy. Moreland might make it for that reason, but once Eccles is ready week 2, do you move on from a Bryce Hall and keep Jimmy Moreland? Because I think Jimmy Moreland's had a better camp than Bryce Hall. I don't think Bryce Hall has done a whole lot. Bryce Hall hasn't been that good at all. I mean, he's just not the same player what we expected to get out of him. Or he's not what we expected. Not anywhere close to what we expected. But I think there's a good possibility that Bryce Hall or that Jimmy Moreland could potentially make this roster, especially at least week 1 with Eccles being out because of the suspension. I want to see. Yeah, same. I don't know why he's still on this team. I don't know why Ashton Davis even. I don't know what exactly the coaching staff sees in him to continue to throw him out there, but they obviously see something in him. I don't know what they see. The guy takes terrible routes. His only highlight of his career was that interception to seal the game last year against the Browns. He's terrible in coverage. He barely plays. He's not good. He's not good. I knew he wasn't going to be any good. He was so hyped up coming out of college. Everybody hyped it. Like, he was so hyped for like a 6th round pick. It was just because he's very athletic. He's very athletic and fast. And that's the main reason why everybody was hyping him up out of college. But he was a 3rd round pick. And he's done nothing in his 3 years as a New York Jet. He's done nothing. Like, what did he do last year? Nothing. Other than that one interception against the Browns. He provides nothing to this team. And he's got a lot of other, like, there's so much other, it's like Trey Dean's more talented than Ashton Davis. I'd take a Trey Dean over Ashton Davis. They should move Bryce Hall to safety. Yeah, I've heard some fans say that. I don't know what to do with Bryce Hall. I think you could certainly move him, or maybe just a fresh start for him might be beneficial, because he's never going to start at corner here because your cornerback room is the best in football. So do you move on? I mean, do you just move on from him and give him a fresh start somewhere else? Do you get anything for him? I will tell you, if he does get cut, a team's going to pick him up. A team's going to take a chance on him. He won't catch on to the practice squad. But he was primarily, looking at his games played, he didn't play a single game. He was inactive every week last year. So it's like, give him a fresh start. I mean, I could see them potentially moving to safety or trying something out, but just from a player perspective, it'd be a win-win for both sides because he doesn't really do anything here, and it could benefit him to move on and get a fresh start somewhere else. It's crazy to think, though, when we drafted Bryce Hall, I thought we were getting a diamond in the rough. Like, I thought we were getting a hidden gem because he had the injury in Virginia, the bad injury that tanked his draft value. And that's why he fell all the way to the 5th round. I believe it was the 158th overall he fell to? That's why he fell all the way. So I thought we were getting something in him. And he made some, like, he made a couple plays. Like, he was all right. He was decent his first 2 years. He showed a little bit of flash, but nothing else. I thought Hall played week 1 and got beat bad. That they inactive him the rest of the season. Trying to think. Week 1, Baltimore. He might have. Looking at his game log, it didn't say that he played any games last year. He might have played week 1, and then they just saw Bryce Hall come out and get burnt. That 2020 draft class, I know we always go back to it, and it doesn't really matter anymore because the 2022 draft class was so dominant. But, oh my God, it's so bad. That's why I'm rooting for Becton too, because he's the only guy that can save that 2023 draft class. He's the only guy. And it's not even saving it. It's so bad. Even if Becton turns out to be good and turns out to be the future, let's just say at left tackle, he is the future or one of the tackle spots. That's the only thing that can make it look a little bit better. But, I mean, Mims gone. Ashton Davis should be cut. Jabari Zuniga gone. LaMichael Pirine. Remember LaMichael Pirine? LaMichael Pirine. That's a Jets legend right there. James Morgan gone. Cameron Clark obviously had the injury, but he is back with the team. I think he's in some player development role now. Bryce Hall and Braden Mann. Braden Mann. What a, oh my God, Braden Mann. Special teams should be increasingly better this year. Like, really much better, because Morstead's so much better than Braden Mann. It's just nice because, like, we don't have to worry about the Jets special teams this year. For forever now, for like a while now, we've had to always worry about the special teams with the Jets, like punter and kicker. Last year, Greg the Leg, we believe, he was good. We didn't have to worry about Greg the Leg. But the punter we had to worry about because Braden Mann wasn't any good. For the first time in a long time, the special teams aspect of the Jets is not even in question. Like, you feel good about the punter and the kicker. On Football Reference, it states Hall played 5 games. Yeah, he probably did. 5 games. Bryce Hall. One of my things that I couldn't stand about Bryce Hall was he would never turn around and play the ball. Like he would always just have his back to the football while running with the guy or running with the receiver, stride for stride. But then he had his back to the ball. He would never be like, all he had to do would turn his head. If he just turned his head a little bit and saw the ball, instead of trying to read the receiver and read the receiver's eyes and then put his hands up and hope he deflects it, like he would always have his back to the football. And it would annoy me so much because if he would just turn his head, he'd have so many more passes defended. So many more. Countless times, guys would get receptions or touchdowns on him. And it would be because his back was to the ball. Like he'd be running with the guy, his back would be to the ball. All you have to do, if you just turn your head a little bit, you can make a play. But he didn't do that, which was super frustrating. And probably that's what separates a 5th round pick in Bryce Hall and a Sauce Gardner. That's what separates the ability to play the ball. And that's why Sauce ended up with a league leading 20 passes defended last year, or whatever it was, something like that. Yeah, Hall played against the Ravens, then weeks 2 through 14 he was inactive, played 15, 18. Yeah, Bryce Hall. I can't tell you. I remember I was at the Bills game 2 years ago. Jets Bills, when they lost 45 to 17 at home. It was the 2021 game. It was the 45-17, I think the score was, something like that. And I remember the game, Bryce Hall and I think Eccles too, they both got toasted. Like there was a play, I think Hall was up against, was it Diggs? It might have been somebody, Gabe Davis. I don't know. It was one of the two receivers. This was 2 years ago. This wasn't the last year's home game where the Jets won. This was 2021, Saleh's first year. And I remember there was a play in the end zone where Hall had good coverage, but they put the throw just right over him. And all he had to do was just turn and look. If he turned his head a little bit and saw the ball, he could have played it and probably would have probably been a deflection. Instead, he didn't do that. There were so many times with that. And then last year, obviously, Buffalo came in and we beat them, and you expect the same this year. You know who's been a really good find? Talk about Bryce Hall, who hasn't been very good, is Michael Carter. I mean, he's been MC2, Michael Carter II. He's been a great find. I mean, he's really one of the better slot receivers, or slot corners, I should say, in football. He had a better year last year than some of the better slot corners in football. He was one of the best in terms of PFF. I mean, the Jets it's crazy. This is where you got to give so much credit to Douglas, because he took I actually have the notes. He took a cornerback core that was Nate Hairston, Brian Poole, Darryl Roberts. That was the 2019 roster when he took over. Those were the 3 corners. And Tremaine Johnson. Don't forget about him. And he turned that into Tremaine Johnson, the terrible Tremaine Johnson contract. He turned that into Sauce, DJ Reed, and Michael Carter II, which is crazy. Also, the days of Buster Screen, who I think just got arrested because he was stealing money. So although he stole a ton of money from the Jets too, because he stunk. It's crazy how much better this cornerback core is now with Sauce, Michael Carter, and DJ Reed, who's been one of Douglas's best free agent signings by far. By far one of the best. Oh, yeah. 2019 cornerback core was brutal. 2019 quarterback core was not bad. It was not good at all. But you look at it now, and they've got one of the best in the league. And that's like the truth, though. Like when you look at this Jets roster, you feel really good about, obviously, Rodgers. Obviously, you feel good about the defensive line. It's one of the deepest in football. But I mean, I think this team, even with maybe a little bit of concerns at safety, but now with Tony Adams emerging, this team, no doubt, got the best secondary in football with the ability of the safeties. Tony Adams emerging, obviously, who has shown a lot of athleticism and really good in coverage. There's a lot to like. And then, obviously, you've got the 3 really good corners. And then if Jimmy Moreland's really good, let's say, or Jimmy Moreland is as good as he's playing camp, but let's say he sticks onto this team, the depth isn't bad either. But if this safety group can just be a little bit better this year than it was last year, and I expect it to be better this year because you don't have LaMarcus Joyner, who was just washed. He was a shell of himself. And you expect Whitehead to make a comeback in his second year in the Saleh system. We've seen that a lot with guys. Not saying he's going to go out there and be dominant, but you expect him to be more the thumper he was in Tampa. Not as many. He got blown so many times in coverage last year. He got so many missed tackles, so many times where he'd go for a big hit and the guy would bounce right off of him. So you would expect him to get better. Again, the Tony Adams emergence is exciting. I think people really got to realize, too, how young all these guys are. I mean, Sauce, second year. Michael Carter, third year. Jordan Whitehead's like in his prime. Tony Adams, second season. So it's exciting. DJ Reed, too. Even though he's like the veteran in that secondary, he's still only 26. He's in the prime. So it's super exciting. Yeah, Screen just got arrested. Yeah. It's funny. Funny. It's crazy how far we've come with this team. I think Sauce will be back Tuesday. I think at practice. We've been dealing with a little bit of the quad, though. It's just precautionary, but he should be back, I think, Tuesday. So I believe we'll probably see Michael Clemens as well tomorrow. Clemens. If any of you guys got takeaways from Hard Knocks, what were your favorite parts of episode 1 of Hard Knocks? There was a lot of them. Hard Knocks did a great job. One Jets Drive and Hard Knocks. I enjoyed both of them. Monday, Tuesday. Episode 2, obviously Tuesday of Hard Knocks. Biggest takeaways from Hard Knocks. Episode 1. Obviously 4 more episodes to go. So got a lot more content when it comes to that. But favorite moments. I thought there was a lot of really good. I thought, again, the Saleh speech to open up was really good. I think the whole stuff about Saleh now is just stupid. It's just the media trying to create a false positive narrative or a false negative narrative. Do you think any starters play against Tampa and the Giants? Maybe some against Tampa. I'd say a decent play. I say a decent amount play against the Giants. Originally I thought Rodgers might play against the Giants, but now after thinking about it, it's probably not going to happen. He never plays in the preseason, really. He's already looked like he doesn't need preseason games. I mean, he doesn't. You know, I'm not saying that he doesn't need practice, but he doesn't need the preseason. Like Rodgers, he's a future Hall of Famer. He got enough work yesterday with the joint practice, or 2 days ago when they played the Panthers, and then next week they'll have 2 more joint practices against Tampa. So I don't think I don't think it's crazy to say that Rodgers might play maybe a drive against the Giants, because we saw Saleh do that last year where he played the starters to kind of a tune-up for Baltimore. So does he do the same for Buffalo? It's certainly possible. I'd say, if anything, though, a majority of the starters probably play against the Giants. Probably not much against the Bucs, maybe a couple. But probably no Rodgers. But it wouldn't surprise me if Rodgers. It wouldn't be surprised me if Rodgers plays or doesn't play. I wouldn't be surprised. I'd expect him not to play, though, against the Giants. But a good chunk of the other starters I definitely expect to play. And, there still are some, competition between, some of the running backs, how that all plays out, especially depending on. So there is a lot of other competitions, like the 6th receiver still competition. You still got all the offensive line stuff. I would like to see the starting offensive line play more coming up here or try to mix and mash, because in-game is the best type of practice to try and build chemistry, and that's the biggest thing with this offensive line now is it needs chemistry. So it'll be interesting, but I'd expect starters to probably play against the Giants maybe, but that's probably about it. At the end of the day, these games mean absolutely nothing. You'll get joint practices in next week against Tampa. No need to risk injury. Play him for a little bit. That's fine. Because if you remember, last year, Quan Alexander, he had that massive hit against the Giants in the preseason game that forced the fumble. So, I think we play Giants with week 9 or something this year. We play the whole NFC East. Week 8. Week 8, Giants, right after the bye week. We get Philly, bye, Giants. That's the week 7 or week 6 through week 8 schedule. And then we get the Chargers on Monday Night Football. So that'll be the final time we see the Giants until week 8. To watch One Jets Drive. Didn't enjoy Hard Knocks. Felt like it was One Jets Drive Part 2. Interesting. I enjoyed it personally. I really liked it, but excited to see episode 2. See what we see what the big storylines are in episode 2. Episode 1 was primarily just obviously the main storylines: Rodgers, Sauce, Garrett Wilson matchup at practice. Those are the big ones. Now, you expect them to get more into the nitty-gritty of stuff where you see a little bit more of maybe Breece Hall, more of the secondary as a whole. I would like to see, the whole Quinning contract stuff would be cool, kind of inside of all that. So episodes will be continuing to roll on here. I really just hope Becton tomorrow can find a way and play 20 snaps. 20, like 15, even if it's 15. I mean, that's more than 7. I just don't want to have to potentially, I just don't feel like having to continue to go through the possibility. Like, if he goes out there and plays 10 snaps tomorrow, it's not good. You want him to play more, definitely more than that, but we'll see. It will be interesting, though. Just going back to this, like, if we do sign a veteran, let's just say after Tampa, I want to see Michael Carter, not that these are starters, but Michael Carter, Izzy, and then Bam, all getting a ton of run in that final preseason game. Because then that's kind of how you can gauge. Obviously, Izzy's already had a touchdown and he looked good, but that's how you can kind of gauge. And that's why I kind of want to see all 3 running backs right now play, because it's like, if you do go and sign a veteran, you want to know who you're moving on from. If you need to move on from somebody, if Breece Hall is ready for week 1 and you need to move on, obviously, because you're not going to hold 5 running backs. So, that's something to keep an eye on as well throughout the rest of the preseason. Is I just want to see a ton of the running game, and see Zach, obviously, but running game's big, because if you do go out and sign a veteran, you want to have a pretty good feeling of who you're going to cut or who you're going to trade. Michael Carter would probably be traded if they move on from him, because you can get something for him. You're probably not going to get a whole lot for Bam or Izzy. Nor are you going to get, I don't think they're going to get rid of Izzy. They wouldn't do that to a rookie. It makes no sense to trade a rookie or cut a rookie right when they drafted him. It's going to be, and Bam's played well. So it's between Bam and Michael Carter. Becton needs to play at least 20 snaps or a quarter and a half. If he does not, it better be because the coach pulled him. Yeah, I hope it's not him pulling himself, which is what he did. Yeah, I'd say 20 snaps. 20 snaps, I think, is, if he comes out of tomorrow, plays 20 snaps, I'd feel pretty good. Because, again, game number 1, it was a lot earlier than usual. Like, usually, again, 2 teams every year play the Hall of Fame game. Usually, this would be the Jets' first preseason game. So, he would usually have more time to ramp up. But you should see him play or continue. Like, game number 1, everybody gets a free pass for the first preseason game, or even the first game, because it's the first game, right? It's always just the first game. You'll get a lot of passes. Becton got a pass. But now preseason games 2, 3, and 4, 20 plus snaps. If he can play 20, I will be okay. If he plays 15 snaps, I guess I don't know if I'll be okay with it. It'd be better than if I just don't want him to go out there and play 10 snaps tomorrow. If he plays 10 snaps tomorrow and pulls himself, that's a problem. 20 snaps is where I'm aiming towards, though. Or the coaches just pull him. Because if the offense is going 3 and out every time, and that's not Becton's fault if he only ends up playing. Like, if he plays 3 drives and it's 3 and outs, then that's not his fault, That's just the offense not being able to move the football. But if the offense is moving the football and there's some long drives and there's a lot of snaps to be out there and there's a lot of opportunities for him, definitely want to see him out there. Because he looked like he played 7 snaps. He looked good, and he's had a good camp in terms of production. It's just staying healthy and playing. And that's the biggest thing with Becton. I think some people are getting that mixed up. People think that he's not having a good camp. Like, he's having a good camp. It's just he's not playing much. He's not out there a ton. So that's the biggest thing. That's really what it comes down to. So 20 snaps. And I'd hope to see Zach for a half, Boyle for a half, because no Strevler. So if they can split it a half and half, I think is pretty realistic to think that. Zach only played 11 snaps, just roll him out there. I mean, you want to see more in Zach than you do Boyle because Zach needs to develop, obviously. So hopefully to see more of Zach tomorrow as well. Zach continues to the receivers, Malik Taylor, Jason Brownlee. Safeties, linebackers, as you mentioned, more of the defensive line depth. Will McDonald again, I believe he'll be out there. Very good first game. So seeing Will McDonald again will be very good. If you guys got any other predictions for the preseason game, drop them in the comments. We'll go for about 5-10 more minutes and then we'll close things out. Will McDonald. Very good first preseason game. Will McDonald's exciting piece. Very exciting. So, does McDonald play the same amount tomorrow like he did last game? I think that, yeah, probably. I'd say so. I mean, again, he is. Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I would like to see that because again, he's a rookie, and you want to see him out there as much as possible. You want to see him out there and getting as much playing time as possible. So, yeah, I'd like to see McDonald play about the same amount as he did last game. I mean, maybe a little less because he did play into the fourth quarter. Somebody I will say, Will McDonald, I would say, yeah, a decent amount, maybe half instead of the full. I mean, he was playing late into the game last game, but he is a rookie after all. So, and he'll be in the defensive line rotation, but he's going to probably have a similar role of Jermaine Johnson last year. So he's not going to be getting a ton of snaps during the regular season. So it is good to see him in the preseason. But I can understand maybe scaling it back a little bit. But Bryce Huff is one guy that I don't know why Bryce Huff continues to play into late in these preseason games. Like, I don't know why. I don't know why they continue. I mean, he's not a cut candidate, or at least you don't think he is. He plays a ton in the preseason. He dominates when he's out there, and then he doesn't, like in the regular season, he don't use him much. Like, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting how the whole Bryce Huff situation is. It's weird because Bryce Huff would only play like 12, 15 snaps in a game last year. You'd walk away and he'd be one of the main stories. Like in those 12 snaps, he'd have like a pressure and a sack. And it would be like, this guy only played 12 snaps. Meanwhile, it seemed like he made the biggest impact. So even though that was Will McDonald question, Bryce Huff, something that I'm keeping my eye on too, on his whole playing time. Like it doesn't quite add up with the whole Bryce Huff playing time. Needs to play less tomorrow. I'd rather see Jermaine Johnson, McDonald more. Yeah. Jermaine Johnson's had a good camp. We saw a little bit of Jermaine Johnson that preseason game, not a ton. He's had a good camp. See if he could continue to produce on the field. Less of Huff. I think, I don't know what more Huff has to show. I don't know if it's like, again, I don't know how the Jets, like, I don't know. I like Huff. Like, he's out there. Whenever he's out there, he's making plays, and that's the biggest thing. Is like when he's out there, he's making plays. So I would like to see less of Huff in a good way. I don't think we need to see a lot more of Huff. I mean, even last year in some of the final preseason games, he was playing all the way into the fourth quarter. And at the time, us Jets fans, we were thinking to ourselves, is he going to get cut? Like, is he on the roster bubble? Is his roster spot less safe than we think? And he made the roster and he barely played in the regular season too. I don't know what it is with Huff, but he's so explosive off the edge. He's one of the quicker guys off the edge. He's got a lot of talent. Like he produces in the minimal snaps that he plays. So seeing less of Huff, I think would be all right. I mean, I think all us Jets fans he played 14 games last year, 3.5 sacks. And there was that stretch of games against Buffalo, New England, and Chicago where he had like a sack in each of those games. Trade bait for offensive tackle. Yeah, I could see that too. I could see him being, because a team would take him. I mean, the guy is very good, and maybe that's why the Jets are playing him a lot. That could certainly be it, to try and continue to put good tape out there to other teams because he played well in the preseason game. He's had a good camp. I could see him being trade bait for an offensive tackle too. It depends on, again, we are very deep at edge. He's young. My biggest thing is with Huff. I feel like he's really good. We know that he's really good, and I feel like if we were to keep him and play him more, he could become a true dominant edge rusher for us. And that's where the possibility of letting him go and having him go, dominate elsewhere would be unfortunate. It would have to be. I would trade him for somebody like if you're going to bring a tackle, it's somebody that's going to have to start. Like I wouldn't just trade Huff for a backup tackle or a depth at tackle. Unless that's the approach the Jets take. I don't know. But the whole Huff thing is it's very interesting. Very interesting. Because he's very good. He does his job in the minimal snaps he gets, and it's all you can ask for, really. But he gets a lot of playing time in the preseason, which is odd. Another undrafted free agent gem, though, that Douglas has found. I mean, he's found a lot of those guys. Douglas is just very good at finding guys just in general. Like JFM was a picked up off of waivers. Obviously, Quincy Williams, Bryce Huff, undrafted free agent. Bam Knight, undrafted free agent. Tony Adams, undrafted free agent. Yeah, definitely a starting offensive tackle. It would have to be somebody good. I mean, you'd have to, you'd have to get a decent amount. I want a decent amount back for Huff because he's a very good player. And I'll tell you what, I guarantee that if he goes to another team and they trade him, he's probably going to make a big impact there. So you better get an offensive tackle in return that's going to start and hopefully solve some of these tackle questions / problems for the Jets. That's the only way I'm getting rid of Huff. I'm not trading Bryce Huff for, a depth tackle. I'm not doing that. You got to trade Huff for a starting tackle, which is obvious. I mean, that's kind of an obvious statement, but it's the truth because you might look at Bryce Huff and say, oh, he's just depth. Let's trade depth for depth, but he's a lot better than just depth in my eyes. So, any other questions you guys got, drop them in the comments. We'll close things out in a couple minutes. And then we'll have a Jets vs. Panthers preseason preview up on the podcast later. Just doing a video of that. Thank you, Armin, for stopping by. And definitely doing more of these live streams. Might do another one next week. Maybe a couple next week, potentially. So we'll have more content coming out there. Jets, Panthers, 4 Eastern tomorrow. Little Zach Wilson, Bryce Young action. See what Izzy can do in his second game. Bryce Huff, as we were just talking about. Seeing how much he plays. And then this is it. Final road game for the Jets in the preseason. Final time that the Jets have to leave New Jersey until week 2. If you think about it, because they'll be home for week 3 of the preseason against the Bucks. Then it's technically a road game against the Giants, but it's at MetLife, so same thing. Then they're home against the Bills. So the next time the Jets have to leave Jersey is September, right after this. So Jets will be home for a little while after this game, once they get back. Because then they've got two preseason games after that at MetLife against the Bucks and the Giants. Obviously, the joint practices against the Bucks. No joint practices this year against the Giants. Last year, there was the one joint practice against the Giants, the one day. This year, there won't be any, but joint practices next week. Continuing to see what the offensive line can do. The tackles are continuing to be the big question for this team, especially going into tomorrow's preseason game where, I mean, Brian Burns was having a field day the other day. And like Mitchell and Turner, he was having a field day, and those guys. There's no way Turner, you cannot start Turner week 1. Like you can't do that. And I like the Turner signing in the beginning because he's a veteran and he played with Rodgers, but he's been a true disappointment for sure. So. But potentially up in the trade value of some guys over the next couple of days. If you do want to go out and trade for a tackle, Jets could certainly do that. See what AVT, if AVT is going to play at tackle, like if the Jets are going to move AVT to tackle, I would try and get him in there and get him reps because he played left tackle last year, both tackle spots actually, but that's not his primary position. So I try to get him reps. If you're even thinking about it, try and get him reps next week in the joint practices. Some live reps. I would like to see that because even though he played last year at tackle, that's not his primary position. So kind of want to see what he can do. But anyway, that'll probably close things out here. 55 minutes. We're going on 56 minutes, going on an hour. We'll have another live stream up probably next week sometime, maybe early in the week, and then maybe one later in the week as well, recapping kind of the the Bucks Jets joint practices next week, which will be open to Jets fans at Florham Park Wednesday and Thursday. So it'll be interesting to see how all that continues to play out. And then, obviously a lot more content on this channel, on the Bubbs or the In the Trench with Gang Green channel or podcast on Apple Podcasts. So have my Jets Panthers preview up a little later. I'd rather have Pro Bowl AVT at offensive tackle than all pro AVT at guard. Because that tackle's a huge need. And again, you might be able to, you might have your solution right now with AVT. I know it might sound crazy to think that AVT, who you drafted to be a guard, could be your future tackle, but like if he was very good at tackle, and maybe you found something. So, and I saw this stat yesterday from Seth Waldo. I know many Jets fans don't like because he said in the first place not to take AVT, that it wasn't a good pick, but he had this stat up yesterday that AVT had like a 95 pass block rate, which would have been like 5th best in the NFL among tackles if he would have played the whole season. Obviously, he got hurt. So he was one of the better tackles in the league when he was out there last year. So this is the exact number. He had a 93.5% pass block win rate while playing tackle last year. Would have ranked 5th best if he played enough to qualify. So, if he would have played more, he probably would have been a top 5 tackle in the league. So I don't trust Dwayne Brown coming back anytime soon. I don't know what it is with Dwayne Brown. I would like to see Dwayne Brown. The Jets continue to say that he's going to be back for week 1, but then again, the Jets have been wrong about a lot of things. So Solid continues to say he'll be ready for week 1. I don't know. My one thing with Dwayne Brown is he is a veteran. So he'll need reps, but it's not like he's a rookie that the Jets are relying on. He's got to learn a whole new system. He's got to learn a whole new offense. Like, he's 38 years old. He's been in the league for a while. He's a veteran. So I could just see him coming back 2 weeks before the season starts, getting some reps, and then going out there because he is a veteran. He can learn, he can kind of just slot right in, not have to have this period of learning the offense or trying to absorb everything. So that's the one benefit Dwayne Brown has on his side, where getting healthy, but he is also old, and that's part of it. I could see Dwayne Brown put on the PUP list. Yeah. You haven't heard much of him. You haven't seen him. They continue to say he's coming back soon, but you haven't seen him. If Dwayne Brown's out, and that's makes the offensive tackle situation more complicated, because then you almost feel like then you would almost have to play Becton, because Becton would probably be at left, and then you'd probably have to move AVT to right. I mean, you could always go Max Mitchell, but I just don't want Billy Turner starting there. And if I would probably go Becton at left and then Billy Turner at right, or not Billy Turner at right, AVT at right. You could go AVT at left and then Becton at right, and then have a Wes Schweitzer filling out guard. Guard's not as important because, again, you have you have 2 guys to your left and right to help you. Tackle's so much more important because it's on the outside edge rusher, and then also you don't have anybody to your left. It's just you, and you're protecting the quarterback's blind side. So, left tackle protecting the quarterback's blind side, obviously not right tackle, but I can live with an average guard. If Wes Schweitzer has to slot in at guard, I could be okay with that if you find your answer with AVT at tackle. How do the Jets approach that? It'll be interesting. But the Dwayne Brown interesting is definitely a big factor in all of this as well, onto when he's actually going to be healthy and back out there. So, but Anyway, that'll do it. Thank you, Armin, for stopping by. Really appreciate the support as always. A lot of fun talking all things Jets. We'll be back again next week with some more live streams and obviously a lot more content on the podcast as well. So I will see you all then. Enjoy the game tomorrow. Jets Panthers 4 Eastern. Believe it's on NFL Network. So a little Zach Wilson, Bryce Young action. And yeah, till next time for another live stream. We'll be back next week talking all things Jets. So stay tuned. As always, hope you enjoyed it. And thanks for watching.